Shamara Planetary Systems, and we are reading texts number 5 and continuation. This is in prose. It's a lot of Sanskrit. We're not going through the Sanskrit. We'll just read the translations, and we'll go till the end of the chapter. So this is text 5 and continuation. This form of the Shishumar has its head downward and its body coiled. On the end of its tail is the planet of Dhruva. On the body of its tail are the planets of the demigods, Prajapati, Agni, Indra, and Dharma. And at the base of its tail are the planets of the demigods, Dhata and Vidhata. Where the hips might be on the Shishumar are the 7 saintly sages like Vasishta and Angira. The coiled body of the Shishumar chakra turns towards its right side, on which the 14 constellations from Abhijit to Purnavasu are located. On its left side are the 14 stars from Pushya to Uttarashada. Thus its body is balanced because its sides are occupied by an equal number of stars. On the back of the Shishumara is the group of stars known as Ajaviti, and on its abdomen is the Ganges that flows in the sky. In brackets, the Milky Way. That's the Ganges that flows in the sky. Text number 6. On the right and left sides of where the loins might be on the Shishumar chakra are the stars named Purnavasu and Pushya. Ardra and Ashlesha are on its right and left feet. Abhijit and Uttarashadha are on its right and left nostrils. Shravana and Purvashadha are at its right and left eyes, and Hanishta and Mula are on its right and left ears. The 8 stars from Magha to Anuradha, which mark the southern course, are on the ribs of the left of its body, and the 8 stars from Mrigashirsha to Purvabhadra, which mark the northern course, are on the ribs on the right side. Shatabhisha and Jeshta are on the right and left shoulders. Text 7. On the upper chin of the Shishumar is Agasti, and on its lower chin Yamaraj. On its mouth Mars, on its genitals Saturn, on the back of its neck Jupiter, on its chest the sun, and within the core of its heart Narayan. Within its mind is the moon, on its navel Venus, and on its breast the Ashwini Kumars. Within its life air, which is known as Pranapana, is Mercury, and on its neck is Rahu. All over its body are comets, and in its pores are the numerous stars. Text 8. My dear king, the body of the Shishumar is thus described, should be considered the external form of Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Morning, noon, and evening, one should silently observe the form of the Lord as the Shishumar chakra, and worship him with this mantra. O Lord, who has assumed the form of time, O resting place of all the planets moving in different orbits, O master of all demigods, O supreme person, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you and meditate upon you. The body of the Supreme Lord Vishnu, which forms the Shishumar chakra, is the resting place of all the demigods and all the stars and planets. One who chants this mantra to worship that supreme person 3 times a day, morning, noon, and afternoon, and evening, will surely be freed from all sinful reactions. If one simply offers his obeisances to this form, or remembers this form 3 times a day, all his recent sinful activities will be destroyed. Purport. Summarizing the entire description of the planetary systems of the universe, Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that one is able to meditate upon this arrangement as the Virat Rupa or Vishvarupa, the external body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and worships him 3 times a day by meditation, will always be free from all sinful reactions. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur estimates that Dhruvaloka, the pole star, is 3,800,000 yojanas above the sun. Above Dhruvaloka by 10 million yojanas is Mahalok. Above Mahalok by 20 million yojanas is Janalok. Above Janalok by 80 million yojanas is Tapalok, and above Tapalok by 120 million yojanas is Satyalok. Thus the distance from the sun to Satyalok is 233,800,000 yojanas, or 1 1,870,400,000 miles. The Vaikuntha planets begin 26,200,000 yojanas, 209,600,000 miles above Satyalok. Thus, the Vishnu Puran describes that the covering of the universe is 260 million yojanas, 2,080,000,000 miles away from the sun. The distance from the sun to the earth is 100,000 yojanas. And below the earth by 70,000 yojanas are the 7 lower planetary systems called Atala, Vitala, Suttala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, and Patala. Below these lower planets by 30,000 yojanas, Shesha is lying on the Garbhodaka ocean. That ocean is 249,800,000 yojanas deep. Thus, the total diameter of the universe is approximately 500 million yojanas, or 4 billion miles. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 5th canto, 23rd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Shamara Planetary System. Om Jnanatimirandasya Giranjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Mayam Dadati Svapadantigam Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripadamaham Vande Sri Guru Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Vanchikalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhyayavacha Paritanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. The blessings of the Vaishnavas. Here in Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami is describing to Maharaj Parikshit the Shamara planetary system. Very oftentimes, the Vaishnavas are considered sentimentalists, just like Prakashananda Saraswati, the leader of the Mayavadi sannyasis in Benares. That was his main criticism on Lord Chaitanya, that they're simply sentimentalists who chant and dance and eat too much prasadam. And that is not very much appreciated by the scholars and renunciates. So, here we can see how the scientific description of the universe is given in a very explicit, in a very detailed manner. Modern scientists have very little clue about the size and the structure of the universe, because as soon as you venture out into outer space, it is the great unknown. In other words, it leaves a whole lot of room for interpretation and speculation. So as soon as somebody says, I think, maybe, perhaps, it appears to be, it could be, apparently, then a Vaishnava says, excuse me, sir, you're speculating. You don't know what you're talking about. There is the deductive and the ascending and the descending way of acquiring knowledge. And we know that the ascending way is very limited because our senses are limited and we are prone to make mistakes. We do have the tendency to cheat, and sometimes, just sometimes, we are under illusion. It does happen to the best of us. So, we may think, me, a conditioned soul? No way. I was born in Denmark. I'm perfect. So I go up to people and I ask them, you know that half of the population is omniscient and the other half is oblivious. Means half of them are born all-knowing and the other half are so intoxicated that they don't want to know anything. So which of the two are you, my dear sir? So, the point was that the Vedic science is exact. And it is coming down through the parampara system, evam parampara prabdam, through the system of disciplic succession, where one teacher has passed down the knowledge to the other teacher. Now we might say, what if one of these teachers made a mistake? Yeah, well, what if? You can go on what ifing all you like, but the pure souls are not interested to change anything, because to be an acharya, to be in disciplic succession, means without ulterior motive, without the tendency to speculate, and without adding or subtracting anything. Now, we may not accept that we're conditioned souls. Let's just analyze this for a second. Has it ever happened to you that, like for instance in India, you ride a bus and the ticket collector comes and he asks you for your money or for your ticket, and you just look the other way, meaning you want to ignore him to show him that you already have your ticket? Has this ever happened to anyone? No. You're all honest. Huh? There's never a flaw. There's never an instance where we think, well, we could cut a corner here and we could get away with it. Huh? Just like as devotees. Has it ever happened to you that you looked at your bead bag and there was just 2 beads, and you're counting beads? There was 2 beads there left. And you were thinking, did I chant these 2 rounds or did I not chant these 2 rounds? And your mind convinced you within a split second, I chanted those 2 rounds. Definitely I chanted them. It's okay. And you pull them down. Huh? Has this ever happened to you? No, definitely not. Huh? So, we are conditioned souls, and that's why we're here. Huh? But the pure souls are souls who are always dependent on the mercy of the Lord, and they have no ulterior motive. Do not have ulterior motive means to be simple, to be without duplicity. In our modern day and age, we tend to be very complicated, very sophisticated, which also means very often duplicitous. Because we become so complicated that we have so many different layers of levels of perception and of identity and of reality and of desire, that we become ourselves confused about what is actually my real desire, what is my actual purpose of being here. To be simple means to be honest, to be without any ulterior motive. Duplo means 2. Did you ever play with Lego? You all heard of Lego, right? You live here in Legoland. Okay, so you know what duplos are, right? Those are the big ones, right? They're like double, they're like 2. So they're duplo because there's 2. So we're duplicious because we have 2 motives. We have the apparent, the so-called official purpose. Just like you come to any country and they ask you on the border, what is the purpose of your visit? Of course, you came to Scandinavia, nobody asks you. You just walk into the duty-free store and it's just like, okay, join the party, okay? What do you want to buy here in our duty-free store of Scandinavia, right? But if you go to countries where they still have borders, and there's still somebody there, they're not out drinking and smoking their heads off. So there you face a border patrol, a police, a customs duty officer, and they usually ask you, what is the purpose of your visit to this country? And it always makes me laugh, because you have to really introspect and search your soul for a moment and think, what is really my purpose? Why am I coming here? Because usually people ask you when you do interviews, radio, TV, why are you here? So there is an apparent and official purpose, but then there's always some hidden agendas. There's always some underlying currents, which we may or may not be ready to reveal. But as devotees, spiritual life is the path of introspection, so we should be aware of our motives. Because, as they say in criminal psychology, motive is everything. No motive, no case. So, what is our motive? Why are we here? And what are we trying to achieve? We're trying to get Krishna Prema. We're trying to go back home, back to Godhead. That is our heart's motive and desire. But in the meantime, because we have been associating with matter for a very long time, we have picked up some traces of desire, some subliminal messages, and we have started to identify with those different types of motives, and we have made them our own. We have bought into the national consciousness of what's to be expected of you. Just like I was in Africa now. And in Africa, every person is expected to produce children, because without children there is no security, because there is no social system, there is no, dole that you can just go on welfare or on benefits or on pensions. The only thing you can count on is what? Children. And because usually a few of them end up being useless or bad, you have to have many children, as many as possible. So the motto is just either way, get the job done. And this results in many other problems which we're not going to discuss. But the point, before we got off the track, was that we have to be conscious, not just about our motives, but also about how do we acquire knowledge. What's the process by which we acquire knowledge? People still think if it's written in black and white, if it says so in the paper, if I saw it on TV, it's the truth, right?
No.
Wrong. Not right. I just did a lot of TV interviews in Africa, and it's, people have a very romantic notion about the media. They think it's like, it's the holy grail of truth. Where people know what they're doing and what's going on. And their only interest is to share the truth with all the people of their country. Well, I'm sorry to, if I'm rocking your boat here, but go once to some of these media places, newspaper agency, TV studios, radio studios, and you'll find the same confused, bewildered, motivated by all sorts of different intentions, all sorts of people who are just doing a job, basically speaking, of trying to get away with whatever it is that they're doing. But there's very little knowledge of what's truth and what's illusion. So if you want to find out what the reality is, you have to seek out a person who is not under the influence of the modes of material nature. We learn from Bhagavad Gita that Sattvagun, Rajagun, Tamagun are perceived in different ways. So if a person says, I am superior because I have so much knowledge, then you know that this person is influenced by the mode of goodness, but he's still conditioned because he thinks that by his knowledge, by his great learning, he has a sense of superiority and he has a sense of happiness because he feels, I know, thus I'm happy because I know how this world works, how things are actually happening. But that is still a conditioned platform. So, for people who are serious about the path of spiritual life, they seek out a spiritual guide who is an acharya. Acharyamam purusham vedha. They are repeating the message of the Vedas. And they're practicing this teaching in their own lives. Thus, they're not deviating from this path. And they can give this knowledge in an pure, in an unadulterated form. So the deductive process really works because the disciplic succession is going back to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, who has expounded this Vedic philosophy in different incarnations and through different teachers. And whenever the chain is broken, he's appearing again to reestablish this knowledge, the dissemination of spiritual knowledge. And that's why we're here. And that's why we are so much interested in publishing and distributing Srila Prabhupada's books. Because this dissemination of spiritual knowledge is of absolute importance. It is absolutely essential that people get this knowledge and have a chance to get free from their sojourn of this material universe. If you go up to any man in this world and you ask him, "My dear sir, are you my father?" Are you able to ascertain who your father is? Even if somebody tells you, "Yes, I'm your father," how can you really know for sure? The only person who actually knows, or is supposedly knowing, is your mother. So we have to ask the mother. So if you want to know what is our origin, where do we come from, we have to ask the Vedic literatures who are guiding us and giving us this instruction. So here, in this part of Bhagavatam, the description of the Shamara planetary system is given, which can be compared to the Virat Rupa, or the universal form of the Lord. And as we have just heard in these recent verses, it is a very grand, a very magnanimous form. And this Shamara has the form of a dolphin. And all the planets are residing on this Shamara. And what is the pivot, or the point upon which all these planets are revolving around? It is the pole star, or Juvaloka. So if you ever get lost somewhere at sea, or inland, or in the forest, and you don't know where you are, you can always direct yourself by the pole star. Because the pole star is always in which direction?
North.
Are you sure?
No.
No. Yes, you're right. It's north. So, in the same way, when we are lost in our life, and we're all lost to different degrees at different points of our existence, we have to know, what is my pole star? What is my Juvaloka? What is the pivot? What is the center point of existence? It's not my umbilical. It's not my navel. The universe is not revolving around my navel. Obviously not, because most people don't even know that I'm existing. So, what to speak of revolving around me? There's 7 billion people on the planet, and out of them, how many million in Denmark? 5. Not very many. Not very many. And even from these 5 million people, most people will never know that we existed. Which is, quite a comforting thought, because it really makes us understand that we are very small. We are tiny. If you hear of this Shamara, this dolphin, this is a big dolphin. This is huge. There is a lot of planets out there. And I'm here. So, to me, an ant may seem like something that I can still perceive, but it's kind of insignificant. But to the higher beings, if you hear the distances between Brahmalok, Janalok, Mahalok, Satyalok, Tapalok, it's like, it's beyond our ability to perceive. It goes off the charts, as we say. So, it gives us the proper perspectives of who we are. We're tiny. We're very small. The 10,000th the tip of a hair. You take a hair, and the tip of the hair, you cut it into 100 parts. And then one of those tips, you again cut it into 100 parts. And that is the size of me. Little jiva. And it's amazing how little jiva can power this big body. How is it possible that little jiva can power this big body? It's not the physical strength that powers the body. It's the soul. Because if the soul would not be there, the body would just simply lie there and not move. There's no movement. So how can little jiva power this big, huge body? Has anybody got the clue? How does this happen? Modes of nature.
According to our desires. According to what we want here, devas and
Okay? Any other?
I was thinking with the help of the super soul, like that little jiva makes he only can desire, and then the super soul makes everything happen.
Okay?
We are the energy and Krishna is the energetic.
Okay?
So the power to move in all this, it is in us, but it's coming from Krishna.
Okay. Any other suggestions before breakfast? All of what you said is true. You see, in spiritual circles, we have to develop a philosophical mind. Philosophical mind means a broad mindset, that we're not getting confused or bewildered by seemingly opposing thoughts. It means we can entertain seemingly opposed ideas. Like, how is it possible that we are the ones who are living our lives, right? But actually, without the sanction and without the potency of the Lord, we cannot even move our finger. You all had the experience when your arm or your leg was asleep, and you couldn't move it, and even though you desired to move it, it just didn't move. And it's quite a mystical experience, because you're in your body, you're conscious, and you want to move, but it just doesn't move. So it makes you aware of how little potency we actually have. If there is no green light, if there is no sanction given, you cannot move. So, Krishna is the determining factor. He is the one, through his agents and his agencies, which gives the permission for the living entity to act in this world and to, according to the three modes that we have acquired, to make a move. But ultimately, we understand that we can only desire. And after that, we are being moved, either by the internal potency or by the external potency of the Lord. So when we hear from Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, the lives of the devotees of the Lord who are under the internal potency are described. Mahatmanas tumam partha daivim prakritim ashrita chantyananya manaso bhuta gyata avyayam. Their lives and their teachings are described, just like Dhruva Maharaj. Dhruva Maharaj is residing on the pole star. Krishna has given him the most important planet in this universe. That's where everything revolves around. He's in charge of that planet. And he's still there right now as we're talking. He's still there, residing there. So, the Lord is giving his devotees very crucial positions in this universe. Most of the demigods are also devotees of the Lord to different degrees, and they're fulfilling their functions in the Lord's service. But we are mainly interested to hear about devotees who are unalloyed, who are pure, who do not have material motives, because we're aspiring to also become purified. Anyabilashita shunyam jnana karmadyanavritam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhakti uttama. Uttam bhakti, or pure devotion, is defined to be free of the tendency of karma and jnana. Now we may think, I've heard this shloka before, right? You've all heard this shloka before? Now what happens when these three words appear on the screen of your mind? I already know. Then you become oblivious. It becomes impossible for you to actually access this information. As soon as we think, I already know this, then we can't access the information. And we think that this information might be true, it might be nice, but it's not relevant for me, because I'm already aware of this fact. And I am not a karmic.